What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, and thanks for joining us for the news. 5 Chinese vessels have been spotted in restricted waters around Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands. It's the latest escalation following the deaths of 2 Chinese fishers. Harrell Hughes brings us this update.
This small fishing boat, being hoisted out of the water, has become the latest flashpoint between Beijing and Taipei. The boat is from China and was spotted off the coast of Kinmen, the outlying Taiwanese islands just kilometers away. Taiwan's Coast Guard gave chase, there was a collision, the boat capsized, and 2 of the fishermen died. And now China is stepping up maritime patrols in the area. On Tuesday, 5 Chinese Coast Guard vessels came close to the islands. 4 entered a restricted zone, and 1 entered prohibited waters, unofficial territorial boundaries that have been tacitly followed since the 1990s.
它的意涵，我想政治的意涵非常的高，好，那当然是一种宣示主权的形式。我们很不乐意于去看到说一个执法的个案，那过去也有过案例。
The incident has piled pressure on Taiwan's Coast Guard, which is now being investigated for criminal negligence, while the families of the fishers demand the return of their bodies and the boat. But locals in Kinmen say intrusions by Chinese fishers are a frequent issue for the Coast Guard.
这个其实我们这边就最严重的问题就是大陆的移民他们跑到沿岸来放网，有时候一来50-60条这样子，尤其像这一次这种案件其实我们那个海巡驱离是很辛苦的。
Tensions remain high, but Taiwan's defense ministry says the military is unlikely to get involved.
都不期望有任何作战这种状况发生。我想那个避战是避免战争，不是避开。他如果意思如何的话，那我们战备规定有很清楚的一个规定，但我们不期望发生这种事情。
Officials are hoping to prevent any further escalation and keep the delicate peace across the strait. Patrick Chen and Harrell Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
The situation in Kinmen has sparked concerns that more Chinese Coast Guard vessels in the region could be a new normal. To find out what could happen, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Ray Powell, a security analyst and the director of Sea Light at Stanford University.
Is this situation in Kinmen, with the increased presence of Chinese Coast Guard ships, is this situation going to escalate?
Well, I mean, I think what you're already seeing is that it is escalating now, but that is pretty typical of how China conducts maritime gray zone operations. Is it seeks opportunities to escalate, believing that it has a greater appetite for escalation than its opponent. So we've seen this time and again in the South China Sea and in other locations. So in this case, you had a small boat illegally in Kinmen's waters, and during again, unregistered, no certificate, clearly doing illegal activity, possibly smuggling. And when the Taiwan Coast Guard gives chase, the boat capsizes and two people die. And China has seized on this as an opportunity to increase its patrol. So this shows us how China uses pretext as a method for advancing its strategic objectives.
Looking at the fact that 2 people died, is China justified in any way for increasing its presence around Kinmen?
Well, of course, it's justified entirely in its own framework, since it believes that all of Taiwan belongs to China. So almost anything that it does, it's justified, right? So it doesn't have to justify itself to itself. What it has to do is try to somehow get Taiwan and the rest of the international community to sort of look away or not pay too much attention because, well, it's understandable. But it's really not understandable if you actually take it apart and consider each thing in its own terms. The boat itself was almost certainly engaged in illegal activities, right? Just the characteristics of the boat. It seems unlikely that those activities were legitimate fishing, if it was fishing at all. It looks more like a smuggling operation, frankly. And then the response is over the top. It's sort of almost ridiculously over the top, to suddenly now increase your maritime patrolling within, Kinmen's waters is clearly just exploiting the situation to advance China's goals.
As we're seeing more and more Chinese Coast Guard ships patrol these waters, is this a sign of a new normal?
Well, they've practically announced it, right? So the Global Times just came out with an article that said that we're now going to normalize these activities. And so they've told you already that that's their entire intent, is to give you a new normal. And again, this meets entirely with this pattern that we've seen from China over the years of using the pretext of some event. It could be a tragedy, it could be an incident of some sort, and then to use that as the pretext by which it then takes that next step and then settles everybody in at that next new normal, so that then there can be in the future another new normal.
That was Ray Powell, a security analyst from Stanford University, speaking to our reporter Jaime Ocon. Wednesday marks the 77th anniversary of the 228 incident, and commemorative events for 228 Peace Memorial Day are happening all around Taiwan. Tiffany Wong is in Chiayi County with more.
Hundreds of people gathered here in front of the Chiayi County Government Office earlier today to commemorate the 77th anniversary of what's known as the 228 incident here in Taiwan. It's an occasion to remember the thousands of anti-government protesters and innocent bystanders killed 77 years ago at the hands of Chinese nationalist military police in a period of violent clashes that began on February 28th. The anniversary is now also a time to remember those who suffered under the subsequent period of martial law known as White Terror. In her final 228 Peace Memorial Day address in office, President Tsai Ing-wen said she hoped that the darkest parts of Taiwan's history would not be forgotten.
这段艰困的过去是台湾历史的伤痕，要治愈伤痕，必须了解受伤的原因。当我们能够诚实地面对真相，互相倾听，才能够缝合伤口，进行真正的和解，让过去的历史不再是台湾分裂的原因，而台湾人民也会因此更能共同守护民主，一起往前走。
Every year, all around the country, there are events just like this one to help people remember the atrocities of the not-too-distant past and try to prevent a repeat in the future. Justin Wu and Tiffany Wong in Chiayi County for TaiwanPlus.
As you just heard, President Tsai Ing-wen has been promising to heal the wounds of 228, but some files explaining why it happened and how many people were repressed in the decades that followed are still classified. Louise Watt reports.
Searching for answers to a painful past. Scholar Zheng Jianyuan is trying to understand why his father and family were monitored for more than 30 years by Taiwan's then authoritarian government. All he knows is his father was briefly a low-level member of the underground Chinese Communist Party in the 1950s, caught by police but never imprisoned.
我父亲他没有做过真正所谓的轰轰烈烈的大事，他只是一个青年的学生，他只是参加了组织而已。
His is not the only family to fall victim to sins of the past. From the late 1940s to 80s, Taiwan was under a martial law regime, a period of suppression and fear known as the White Terror. Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang government executed at least 3,000 to 4,000 people and imprisoned around 140,000 for their real or perceived opposition. More than 30 years later, much about the atrocities committed during this period is still unknown. While some archives have been opened, files have been heavily redacted, and others, like that of Zheng's father, are permanently classified, leaving the mystery of why he was being monitored by the state for so long, for an apparently minor case. The secrets lie in there, the Military Intelligence Bureau, where files of people who were surveilled by the state from the 1950s onwards are still kept. The government recently changed the law to allow for the release of more documents related to the White Terror period, but thousands of others will remain classified. President Tsai Ing-wen came to power in 2016 promising transitional justice. She's overseen the public exoneration of almost 6,000 wrongfully convicted people and compensation of $100 million to White Terror victims. But the body she set up to spearhead that work was dissolved in 2022. The Executive Yuan, or the Cabinet's Human Rights Department, said transitional justice is an ongoing process. It says it expects most permanently classified files to be declassified by August 2024, after being reviewed by government agencies, including the National Security Bureau. It says other cases will have confidential parts redacted, and copies of those censored files will be sent to the National Archives Administration. Zheng's father died in 2020, having refused to talk to his family about his actions during the White Terror period. But Zheng, curious by nature, has made it his life's mission to find out, interviewing his father's classmates and publishing a book on what he does know about his father's life. He thinks Taiwan needs to learn from its history.
但是我们要让这些加害者，他们如果当年曾经做过不人道、不合法、不正义的行为，他应当受到历史的审判。
For years, Taiwan's now democratic government has said it wants to redress past injustices. But there is still no closure for some, who continue to wait for answers, to reveal more of a dark period in their country's history and their loved ones' lives. Luffy Lee and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Tuvalu has reaffirmed its diplomatic commitment to Taiwan after appointing a new prime minister earlier this week. In a post on X, Tuvalu's foreign minister shared his government's list of priorities, which includes plans to strengthen ties with Taipei. The announcement is a relief for Taiwan, as new Prime Minister Feleti Teo's views on maintaining relations had previously been uncertain. Tuvalu is one of just 12 countries with official diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Taiwan's economy is starting the year off strong, with export orders growing in January. The Economics Ministry says export order value climbed by 1.9% compared to the year before to hit $48 billion. Increased demand for AI and high-performance computing products is behind the growth. Orders put in ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday in February also helped. Taipei Zoo's oldest Asiatic black bear died on Tuesday at the age of 35. Known as Xiaoxiong, or Little Bear, the zoo says it had been suffering from declining health because of its age, and then just a few days ago, it couldn't move its back legs anymore. This zoo decided to put down Xiaoxiong to stop its suffering. Asiatic black bears are listed as vulnerable, with deforestation and poaching their biggest threats. Winning the approval of solid gold turtles is the name of the game at an annual competition held in Taiwan's Penghu Islands. But the prize? The turtles' blessings and a hefty insurance bill. Reese Ayers has more.
Competing for blessings from the great golden turtle. In this annual event held on Taiwan's Penghu Islands, competitors throw wooden divination blocks, typically used to ask for divine guidance, to win the favour of a 16-kilogram solid gold turtle, worth around $1 million. The winning team is the one to receive the most positive responses from their divination blocks. This year, the Manfu Mercedes-Benz touring team took the win, after narrowly losing out in last year's competition.
去年我们也是跟那个义大金饰，我们也是有一起搏，但是我是跟台湾的朋友一起，然后我们差一个圣杯。
So, what exactly do the winners get? They earn the privilege to shell out an almost $2,000 insurance premium to protect the turtle in its temple until the next competition, and are expected to contribute more gold to increase the turtle's mass for the next year. This event is just one in a series of turtle-themed activities held in Penghu around the Lantern Festival period at the beginning of the lunar year. Taiwan is a hotspot for several species of sea turtles, which represent luck and longevity in Chinese-speaking culture. And though a $2,000 insurance bill might not sound like much of a prize, for the winners, it's a small price to pay for a year's worth of turtle power. Ryan Wu and Reese Ayers for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for joining us today for What's Up Taiwan. You can find these stories and more on our website and on our mobile app. And before we go, check out these mimosa trees blooming in the hills along the French Riviera. I'm Eric Gao, and I'll see you again on TaiwanPlus News.